streaming right now, just so you know.
So, you graduated high school, you graduated college, all the tests are done. Wrong. Today on Baby Boomer University, we are having our Elder Law Quiz. Play along to see how knowledgeable you are on things that'll matter. Now, today our guest is John Casterline from the Casterline Law Offices, which is an elder law firm that specializes in estate, Medicaid, and VA benefit planning in southeastern Michigan. I'm your host, Rich Sparks, and welcome to Baby Boomer University. Class is in session. All right, well, welcome to Baby Boomer University. We're going to have a pretty good show here. John, I want to thank you for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. We're going to get started on our quiz here, and I'm real curious. I did not look up any answers prior to coming. I wish I could have had a couple other people here, and they could have answered, and I could have just sat back looking knowingly, but I can't do that. A couple of quick announcements on some things coming up. I am emceeing a charity event this Sunday from 4 to 7 o'clock, and this is for the, I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly. It's an Indian foundation, Sigaram Foundation of Michigan, and they do homes for children in India, and there's a lot of stuff going over there. If you can come out, if you like Indian food, this is a great place to come. It's going to be at the Ruther Middle School in Auburn Hills and Rochester Hills from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock this coming Sunday. There will be activities for kids, great homemade Indian food. Come out. You'll love it. And we have a bunch of them this time. My apologies. Next, we have a downsizing seminar coming up Saturday, June 1st. This is a lunch and learn, so you get to come out. We have a lot of fun. We try to make it humorous. Get a great lunch. Check out a great location. And this is going to be at 28801 Jefferson Avenue in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. And that is the Lakeshore Senior Living. To register, you can reach out to Pam Sparks at 248-342-2588, 248-342-2588. And I'll be speaking at that one. Last but not least, yes, it's amazing how you have time, right? I am on the board for the 21st Annual Ray Filipchek Memorial Golf Outing. This is for the Sterling Heights Rotary Club, a great organization. They do fantastic things. It's Friday, June 1st, shotgun start. If you're a golfer, fantastic. If you're not a golfer, that's okay. We do have our Sponsor a Hero program. Last year, we had over 14 heroes sponsored by people just like you. What do I mean by that? Whether or not you're a golfer or not, our heroes consist of active military and police and fire. We had 14 that we were able to take out and have a great day of golf. To get more information on this, you can.
So can you check the date on that?
Oh, sure.
Because you had June 1st for both of those events.
Oh, they are.
One on a Friday, one on a Saturday.
Oh, let me see. They just hand them to me here. So I've got Friday, June 21st.
Ah, that will help.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Friday, June 21st on that one. And the other one is June 1st, which is on a Saturday. But the golf outing, if you're interested, reach out to Brian May, 248-321-5885. That's 248-321-5885. Great organization. They do have a 4-star rating with Charity Navigator, which is a great place to check out charities. If they have a 1-star, that means they have like 99% overhead fees. This particular group has 0% overhead fees. So it's kind of good. So here, I'll give you this golfer one. All right. So let's get started. We have a lot to go over here. And play along. We're going to wait a second, and after I ask the question, so you can think in your mind. Because here's kind of the key. We're trained in primary school, high school, junior high, et cetera, to get the basics. We go to college to learn how to get a job. It's a work permit, right? And then we get to that certain point in age, and there is no training. And these are some of the most paramount things to having. We're living longer, And if we're not prepared, that can be a rough journey. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
So these are absolutely things you need to know, you need to look into. And this is going to, after this, if you saw the promo on this, I kept saying you will be taking your own life elder law quiz in the near future.
Yes.
So,
and there's a tendency from my clients, there's a tendency for them they don't know the questions to ask. They don't know what issues that are really going to face them. And so that's one of the things that, the questions encompass a lot of different areas of the law, and I'm able to bring together some answers and help direct them in the right way.
If you just have the questions to ask, that's half the battle.
Right.
I always loved that in college when they would say, okay, did you come with any questions? Buddy, I don't even know what to ask. So,
right.
Yes, question one, what's a good question? So,
yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, let's start off with our first one. And do you want to read these off, and I'll try to attempt it?
Okay, so we made it a little easier. You got a 50% chance of getting the answers correct. True or false? 50% of the people over the age of 65 will require long-term care.
I'm going to go with false. It seems a little high to me.
Actually, it's a little low.
Oh!
It's 70% of those 65 will have some experience with long-term care. And, some of it is going to be covered by Medicare rehab. You fall, you break a hip, Medicare will cover a rehab. And so, but that's still an experience with long-term care. And other people will end up in a nursing facility for years. Some people will end up in a memory care unit or assisted living for a long time. So it varies all over the board. But so if 70% of the people are going to experience some type of long-term care situation, but most, you get a room full of 10 people, and most people would consider themselves to be one of the 3 that aren't going to need it, rather than the 70% that are going to need it.
Of course, I'm going to lay on that side of the odds. Well, the thing too is, with that whole, every time I hear, the life expectancy is increasing out to 100, and actually I just read an article that they expect within the next 2 years we're going to surpass 100 as average. But it's that quality of life and being prepared, because long-term care, how can that impact you financially, your family?
Right. So, you can live for a long time, but, our Social Security was implemented as a temporary program, and now it's still around, but the idea at the time was that, it starts at 62 and the average life expectancy was 69. Yep. And so it was only going to be around for a few years. Well, now it's around for decades after you retire and you become qualified for that. And so same thing with Medicare. And so some of the crunches that we're getting on all the federal budget is because people are living so much longer, and it's turning everything upside down.
So what are some of the ways that you could prepare for long-term care? How do you feel about long-term care insurance? And
so for long-term care insurance has a role in all this. Understanding the different federal programs that might be available to you, and understanding there's some other questions coming up, understanding when those programs will actually cover something, understanding what's covered and what's not covered. Those are all big things to consider. So your question was broad enough to where we could probably spend the rest of the show talking about that. And I don't think you really want to do that. But
no.
But yeah, definitely having, thinking about, the cost of care as you go into retirement should be part of it. And, look around and look at the cost of things, and go to some seminars. You have the seminar coming up at Lakeshore Village, Lakeshore
Living, I believe.
Lakeshore Living,
Yeah.
a beautiful facility.
Oh, it really is.
In St. Clair Shores. But go look around and experience what is that. Get an idea of the cost. That should be part of people's retirement planning, rather than the vacation villa. Sorry about that. Rather than just going through and saying, okay, where are we going to winter? Where are we going to vacation?
Right.
It's consideration at the back end of life as well.
Well, and a lot of things. Actually, I just had a conversation with a lady last night, And we were talking. She's like, oh, I'm going to start doing this stuff 10 years from now. And she was probably in her early 60s at that point. And then when I showed her the demographics of baby boomers and the whole concept of supply and demand, et cetera, and how it impacts pricing, those things you better start looking at now and understanding that, because now in her case, she's looking to 10 years from now move to a ranch-style home. Well, they're not building them.
Right.
It's less than 1% of all national new builds. So that's why I was trying to explain to her that those are going to be unicorns here in 5, 6, 7 years. And it's the same way, even though we see a lot of senior communities being built, having an idea, budgeting for it.
Yeah.
Because once that wave really hits strong, supply and demand, those prices will go up.
Yeah. Right now, it looks like there's, as fast as they're being built, it seems
Incredible.
as if that the supply should exceed the demand and the prices should be low, but they're not really low. They're still all that's demanding a pretty good sum, and so again, not just the retirement that happens when your golden years when you can travel and have fun. This is also planning for what's going to happen to me if I need care, if I can't get up and down stairs, if I can't cook or clean for myself. What am I going to do?
Right. How can I be in that living situation that's going to facilitate it?
Yeah.
No, that's good stuff. Now, as far as legally speaking, is there one thing that people should do to prepare for this that you would recommend or look into?
Well, part of it is being prepared for incapacity, and so that if you ever get to the point where it's a tragic, it's a stroke or a car accident or it's an immediate thing, you need to have the ability for your wife or your kids or some other loved one to be able to step in and help you make decisions for you to get you into a place where you can provide for care, and that's something that sometimes people don't really plan for that.
Right.
They're just, again, they're not thinking that it's ever going to happen. And so they don't plan for it, and then we're stuck. One of my least favorite things to do in this area is the living probate, where we have to go into court to pursue a guardianship or a conservatorship.
Right.
Those are extremely frustrating. The guardianship isn't that bad to get and to maintain. The conservatorship is it's one of those areas where it's a good deal for the attorneys and not a good deal for anybody else.
Okay.
Because it's very time consuming on an annual basis
Right.
to balance the checkbook and satisfy the court that you're not stealing anything and going forward. So powers of attorney are kind of like an insurance policy. You hope you never have to use it, but if you do, it's going to keep you out of the living probate, which is far worse than the death probate.
Okay. I did not know that. That's really good. All right. Well, let's try question number 2 here.
Okay, number 2. True or false? A living trust and a living will are the same thing.
False.
Very good.
I know that one.
So, but here's one of the areas where lawyers have done a good job of confusing some of this area, because we've got different names for different documents.
Mm-hmm.
And you can read an article in AARP or the New Yorker, and it'll say, these are the things that you need, or Susie Orman telling you that these are the things that you need. And they're similar names for different things. So a living will and a living trust. I have people calling me all the time saying they want a living will. And a living will is what would allow somebody to make a decision, a medical decision that would cause you to die. It's permission to pull the plug.
Sure.
A living trust is more of the bucket that we create to be able to put your assets in, to manage those assets through your lifetime, and then after death they avoid probate. So similar names, totally different tools, and then we have. You have a last will and testament, and you've got an advance directive, and you've got a revocable trust, an irrevocable trust, and a living trust, and a loving trust, and you've got all these things that have lawyers might know what they mean, but it's hard for the public to always understand what are the different documents and what are we talking about here.
Right.
And
what do I actually need here? And
right.
No, I can totally appreciate that. And a lot of people, I've had a lot of folks that thought a will was going to keep them out of probate.
Right.
And, I'm not an attorney, but I would refer them to someone like yourself and say, if that's your goal, you need to talk with them because it will not.
Right. A will will end up in probate. So a trust can avoid probate. It's all about the title of your assets. And I think we've got another question related to that as we come up.
Yep.
So we can
Hold off on that for a second.
We can keep going. Number 3.
All right.
And here's a little bit about what I was just talking about. So an advanced medical directive, a power of attorney for health care, a patient advocate designation, and a living will are the same thing.
Well, that's a mouthful. Let's go. I'm going to look at this for 1 second. So a medical directive, a power of attorney for healthcare, a patient advocate designation, and a living will are the same thing. I'm going to say no.
So that one could probably go either way.
Okay.
So, but it is technically, I think you might be correct. If it was a law school exam, you would get credit for that because there are distinctions between those. But they are all what gets into my clients' minds that this is what they need. This is my advanced directive, and
Right.
so it's all in the medical directive. Who can make medical decisions for you if you become incapacitated? So these are somewhat interchangeable terms when we're talking about it, and they vary from state to state. Michigan happens to be a power of attorney for healthcare state.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do things a little bit differently because it's all structured in this power of attorney as opposed to other states that are living will states, and then the living will is the most important document. And so so it varies, but those are kind of what I was talking about in the last question, that similar names or a whole bunch of different names for similar tools, and it gets confusing.
So just to expand on that just a little bit, let's say someone's primary residence is in Michigan. They're winter birds. They're down in Florida. They had all their documents drawn up here. How does that work if you have a relative here having to deal with something down in Florida? Does it go under Florida law or Michigan?
Well, principal residence is going to have somewhat control of that.
Okay.
If you've got a lot of the snowbirds will spend at least 6 months in Florida. They want to be a Florida resident because Florida doesn't have a state tax,
Right.
and so they can have that as their primary residence. They have to spend 6 months there. Oftentimes, the documents that they've done in Michigan would still be fine in Florida. Florida has a special rule about how wills have to be done. They need to have 3 witnesses instead of in Michigan they require 2, and so people sometimes find out that their documents don't work in Florida. So what I always recommend, I've got some colleagues, friends down in Florida that I refer people to that are hopefully going to steer them in the right direction and tell them what they need and not just what's good for that attorney's pocketbook.
Well, that's why I love referrals. Just like with our clients, I refer a lot of folks to a lot of people, and this might be something that they're only going to use one time, this client, but the vendor I'm referring to, I might refer 10, 20, 30 a year, and my deal with them is treat my folks like kings and queens, say what you're going to do, sometimes more, never less, and we're golden. So it's the same thing. A referral coming from you is much stronger than someone just going to Florida and saying, hey, look, here's this ad in the back of a magazine at a restaurant. He does wills.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the other thing to remember when we have properties, we have real property in different states. Bank accounts in different states are pretty easy. Real property in different states creates a bigger problem.
Okay.
And because the probate rules in that state are going to control the ability to distribute that asset. So that's where we get into what is referred to as ancillary probate.
Okay.
And so you can it's 2 probates. You have to do a probate in Michigan where your residence or your death was, and you have to do another probate in the state where you have the other property. So for people that own property in 2 different states, a trust makes a lot of sense because we can avoid probate.
Right.
We just need to have a proper living trust that is funded with both of those properties. So that's something that is really important. Florida has some very favorable statutes that favor attorneys as far as it goes for fees. So
Really?
they can they have statutes that say a reasonable fee for an attorney to do this probate is X number of percent. So the probate attorneys in Florida make a lot of money because it's a pretty big percentage. The statute probably went into place when the estates were 100 or 50,000, 100,000, so 3% of 100,000 wasn't that much. Well, 3% of $1 million is a pretty good payday for the attorney. So they like probate. A good reason why you would want to make sure that your planning is to avoid probate, especially if you happen to be in a state like Florida.
Wow, that's really quite interesting. So if you get that advice from an attorney in Florida saying, don't worry about just having a will, probate's not that bad, then you might want to get some other advice.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, in Michigan, probate really can be relatively simple.
Yeah.
Depending on what type of probate it is.
Well, so there's when I first became an attorney, they amended the probate code, and then they did another amendment to the probate code in 2000, and it did really simplify the probate procedure. So it doesn't have to be as bad as it used to. We can still do a very complicated probate. And
sure.
if there's a
Something's
family's being contested or something, we can be in front of a judge all the time. But the new system is where we don't have to. If everything goes as expected, we never have to stand in front of a judge, and that saves a ton of time and a ton of money for the families because we don't go to court. We don't have to prepare for court. We don't have to go sit in court. We don't have to wait for our case to be called along with everybody else. And so you're not paying an attorney to sit in a courtroom for something that's, kind of a rubber stamp. The judge rubber stamps these things. Now they said, well, gosh, all these things are kind of rubber stamped anyway, as long as you can present it to the court clerks and analysts and court attorneys, there's a way to get around that. So I always tell the clients they have a choice. We can do probate the hard way, and there'll be no way anybody can ever come back and contest anything. The fee is going to be, $10,000 to $15,000.
Right.
Or we can do it the easier way. You can still get everything done that you wanted to get done. Maybe somebody crawls out of the woodwork 10 years from now and can contest it. But instead of being $10,000 or $20,000, it's $3,000, $4,000, maybe $5,000 at the outside. And I've never had anybody take me up on doing it the more complicated way.
No, but here again though, all that can be avoided by having a trust.
Correct.
Excuse me. And I will say this. I've been doing this for 20 years. There is only 2 scenarios that I've ever had to have basically what we call a split closing, where we take a husband and wife and put them in separate rooms to sign, or family members, and that's divorce and estate.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, you'd like to think it's not going to be contested, and you can have a great family. Then all of a sudden, Sister Susie feels slighted because Johnny took the thimble that her and her mom always shared, and things just fall apart.
Right.
And then at that point, you're in a complex probate situation, right?
Right. I try to get the families to come in and work together as a collective unit. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always work. I had one situation where one of the daughters pointed to one of her sisters, wouldn't look at her, just would point at her and say, "That one over there." And I was like, okay,
this is not going to be
amicable
fun.
resolution may not be possible. So yeah, and again, they get people. There's a quote that's attributed to, I've seen it attributed to both Abraham Lincoln and Ben Franklin. It says, "Money makes people funny," and
that's a good quote.
And so it doesn't matter who said it. It wasn't me.
Right.
I'll attribute it to one of those two and try to give them credit. But it is just so true that it can be a $500 couch from, and it has that's what the purchase price was. So the sales price, the value today might be $50, and
right.
they're getting all bent out of shape about it.
Oh, I've seen it.
And emotional and And when the emotions start going, then everything, all bets are off, and we can have a simple probate turn into a complicated probate because people let their emotions get the best of them,
Right,
and it's the principle of the thing. And
boy, there's a war cry for you right there.
Right.
I don't mind. It's the principle. So the best gift you can give your kids this Christmas season, get a trust.
Great gift.
Great gift.
Great gift.
All right. Let's move on because we've got several more in 30 minutes.
So, number 4, true or false? You can make gifts of $5 million to your children, and no one has to pay the IRS a gift tax.
I think that number is a bit extreme. I'm going to say false.
So, and you would be wrong.
Really?
Right. So, it's actually the estate tax limit. The estate tax and the gift tax limit are still tied to each other, and so there's what they call it a unified credit. So, the estate tax limit now is like $11.5 million. So when people will come through, the old mantra with trust planning was that you need to get a trust to save taxes and avoid probate. Well, the save taxes part of it are almost out the window because the estate tax limit is $11.5 million. And that's set to sunset something like 2023. It was part of one of the the Trump administration changes. So it might go back down to like $5.5 million. But even if it does go away, $11 million is down to it's still $5 million. So people will come and they say, "Well, I can only give away $11,000 a year," and I'm like, "Well, that's you're kind of right. You're talking about the annual gift tax exclusion,
right?" That's kind of what I was thinking of.
And it's 11,000, or it was 10,000 when it started. It's adjusted for inflation. It's now $15,000 a year. So you can line up as many people as you want and distribute $15,000 to them, and you don't even have to file a gift tax return.
Wow.
If it's more than $15,000, you're supposed to file a gift tax return. If your gross estate is less than $11 million, it would never have an impact on you. It's just the IRS is going to track that gift that exceeded $15,000 and add that into your gross estate when you die. If you are more than $11 million, they would want their estate tax on it.
Okay.
So, but gifting can be done and without incurring any gift tax issues. And so when we get into asset protection and moving assets around, people will say that, well, we can only give $15,000 away a year. I'm like, well, no, you can do more than that, and there won't be any gift tax. There's some impact on all the different programs, but
right, because that's where it comes in with like Medicare and VA, and then So just a little shout out to my kids, Nicholas and Alexandria. Just want to say on this one, do not count on it. So moving on here.
Okay, true or false? Because you already have a trust, you don't need to do any additional planning as you get older.
False.
Very good.
Yeah, I knew that one.
So, well, no, actually, let's do that. It's true, right? Because it's the way it's worded. You don't need to do any more planning because you already did it.
Things change, though.
So, things change. So you did a trust in I have a lot of clients that are coming in. They're in their 90s, and they did a trust in the 80s or early 90s, and they were 60 or 70 years old.
Right
now, they're 80, 90, pushing 100 years old, and things are different. Things have changed. Some of them have a spouse that's gone. Some of them have some children that have predeceased them. Their financial situation can be totally different.
Assets have moved around.
And, they had the cottage. They had, or they didn't have a cottage, or they didn't have the Florida place. Now they have so things are all over the board. Their powers of attorney they could name their brother, their wife and their brother who are both deceased. And so I always want to look at their documents, and I can, when you know what you're looking for, you can review those in just a few minutes. It doesn't have to be incredibly expensive to review things. If things are good, I send them on their way saying, good, you're still in good shape, but let's figure out, what are your goals now? Your goals now are totally different than they were 30 years ago.
So just a quick question. What life event would you say during this aging process when that should be a red flag that yes, you need to come in and have these reviewed. Is there particular life events, like I'm thinking next year I'm going into a senior community or whatever?
Yeah. So that would be an excellent time to come in. So the way I describe it to my family is when they sign trusts is that when do they want to come back and see me, or when do they want to contact me? And I would tell them anytime there's a major life event that happens.
Okay.
And whatever you think is a major life event. So obviously, a bad checkup with a doctor is a major life
okay.
event.
Sure.
Let's look and see, does that change our
Right.
planning? Our goals might be suddenly different. The death of a family member, so obviously if a child dies,
Right.
how does that affect your plan? And and if they're not
had
there,
more
who's going to?
grandchildren,
Would
or-
it go to? More grandkids, depending on what you've got. But so major life events.
Okay.
And so if we can get back, and I say that's when you should contact me. So they can call me on the phone. I end up saying that a 5-minute phone call is free. You're not on the clock. You can tell me what happened, and I can say, you should be okay. You don't need to come
Right.
in, or this would make sense to come in.
Sure.
And-
And let me just point out, John here is an expert in elder law care. This is not something that, in my opinion, the person that handled your divorce 20 years ago, the person that was able to get little nephew Johnny's, driving intoxicated ticket gone. You want to see a specialist on this. This is stuff that you can't recoup from if it's designed incorrectly.
Correct. It is. I always got a kick out of the ads, and I did it for a while. I was a general practitioner for several years as a younger attorney,
Right.
and I participated in a yellow page ad, and it says that we did everything.
Oh, sure.
And I learned that I really wasn't. It was good exposure to have exposure to a lot of different areas. However, I wasn't an expert on everything. And I decided I wanted to be an expert on something, so I moved toward the estate planning and elder law track,
Absolutely.
rather than trying to keep trying to do divorces and drunk drivings and everything else. I couldn't really do it.
I always
and say
thought
it
a
was good.
great commercial for those guys would have them dressed up like a magician going, pick a card, any card. Just
Right.
whatever you need, I'm
Right.
here.
Yeah. So there's a lot of attorneys who that'll create documents. They'll create wills and trusts and stuff, but they don't necessarily understand the impact of how it all works out down the
Absolutely.
road. So
And I've seen that with clients of ours where they thought they had things in order and then Medicaid came into play and things weren't in order. And that there was negative impacts.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you. All right, let's see.
okay. Okay, true or false? Just like Medicaid, the VA requires you to be virtually broke before you can qualify for VA aid and attendance.
You don't have to be virtually broke. I'll say false on that.
So, that's correct. The VA has a different limit. In October of last year, they changed their rules, and drastically. So there's drastic changes to the VA rules in order to qualify for aid and attendance last year. So one of the good things they did that, though, for the first time is they gave us a bright line for asset levels.
Right.
And before that, it was nebulous, at kind of a moving target.
Right.
It was the older you are, the less you could have. And so they gave us an asset limit of $127,061 is the limit for 2019. So the Medicaid limit is for a husband and wife, it's different, but
Right.
but for a single person, it's $2,000.
Right.
So so the asset limits are drastically different. So the thing to remember about that is that qualifying for, if you are a wartime veteran, and you served either during we still have a few World War II guys around, or the spouses of World War II veterans. But if you were active during the Korean conflict, or the Vietnam War, or during the Gulf War, and you become disabled and need assistance, you can. There is a great program that's available to you or your loved ones to be able to help cover the cost of those things. So
Huge program.
yeah. And it can be an incredible benefit. You talked about long-term care policies earlier. This is a great it's the equivalent of a long-term care policy that the VA gives the veteran or their spouses. So
now here's a question for you, and I know the answer, but it's an important question. You're a spouse of a veteran receiving benefits. He passes away. You fall in love with someone down the hall and get remarried. What happens to those benefits?
The guy you fell in love with better be a veteran.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, you lose the veterans, the benefits from your spouse when you remarry or when you get divorced. And so you can't really get it back together after that. There are some weird exceptions and some different rules that we need to be aware of. So it's not all the way across the board like that. But for the most part, you want to think about that. That would be a major life event where you would want to contact the elder law attorney before you do it.
Chat it through before. And here again, that's just one of those life decisions that's at that age you cannot recoup from.
Yeah. And this isn't, I don't think we have a question on this. But here's the other thing that people will get all upset about when they come in to see me is that we've got a second marriage. His family and her family. They both have kids. They were both widowed. They got together and they married. Afterwards, so everything is amicable and the kids get along. Everything's fine, and they did a prenup because they were keeping everything separate. They had a working account for paying bills, but everything else was kept separate. If one of them lands in a nursing home and they want to look at Medicaid to cover the $8,000 to $10,000 monthly bill, Medicaid doesn't care that there's a prenup.
That's a great point.
They're a husband and wife. All of the assets go into one bucket. And so it's a big surprise when we get into, even with the VA, people are surprised, that, well, why are his assets going to count? They're separate. We have a prenup. And it's, part of the confusion about which laws cover everything. Prenup laws will do well in divorce court. But they don't have anything to do with Medicaid qualification or VA qualification. So those are separate things. So
and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but there are some ways you can set things up to protect some assets and still get Medicaid.
Correct.
That's something to look into.
Right. So just kind of a rule of thumb on that is that in Michigan we still have some good tools available to us. I don't have any idea how long they're going to last. But if we have a husband and wife, there are tools available through a qualified elder law attorney that would allow you to save, and I describe it as 90% of the assets. So 90%, you've got $200,000 of assets. You can keep 180 of it for the spouse that's at home. The spouse that's in the nursing home can go on Medicaid. And so, but it's a complicated way of getting there. It doesn't totally it's not intuitive of why it works, but we can make it work. I do that stuff all the time.
This is something a novice should not attempt.
Right. And then for a single person, we can save a little better than half of the assets.
Okay.
And again, it's the same thing. One of the things, this is not a knock on the professionals that work at the nursing homes, but when they offer to do the Medicaid application for free, you don't need to go to an attorney to do that. That's fine. If you want them to do the Medicaid application, that's fine. They're not going to do the planning for you to show you how to save any money.
No.
And so hire me to do the planning. If you want to have them do the application for free, I'll do the application for free. I'm not charging for that. I'm charging for the planning part of it.
Right.
So,
but what a huge game changer, because I think a lot of people don't understand. When Medicaid kicks in, your assets are gone. And even if you're getting money from various things, they can literally take that and put you on an allowance. And what's the allowance amount? It's nominal.
It's like $60 a month for personal needs. So the other thing to think about is that it's never too late. If you're not out of money, it's not too late to do some planning.
So even when you're in the Medicaid process, and you haven't qualified yet, but your monies are being eliminated quickly, they can still reach out to you and save some of those assets.
Right.
Okay.
My first Medicaid client his mom had been in the nursing home for like 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And they took close to $1 million and had it down to less than $100,000 over that 7-year period, and so they were okay with that. It was mom's money. They were pretty much okay with that, but when they came to me at the last 100,000, and we did the half loaf planning. We saved about 50% of that, which was, again, it's a slush fund. It's there's some money there to pay for some things, to be able to get glasses without having to wait 6 more months, or to get the dentures replaced, or to
get clothes,
to buy some clothes, because $60 isn't going to cover very much. And then when she passes, there's enough money to pay for the funeral luncheon. There's again a little bit of a slush fund. Is it going to change anybody's life? No.
I don't know. I think having that slush fund can have a huge impact, because that $60, right? I mean, it's like what? Okay, you get toothpaste, shampoo, deodorant. You're done.
Yeah, right.
Right. You want a snack? Next month. So, all righty. Let's see what we got here.
Okay. And we just answered this one, so we're going to skip that. So,
well, let's read it.
Okay, here's the question, and I answered it just now. So, if your loved one is already in a nursing home, it is too late to protect their assets.
All right. We all know that one's true now, that it's not too late, so it's false. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, it is not too late. So
it is not too late.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one of my favorite questions. Is it a simple way to avoid probate is to use a quitclaim deed?
Don't do it. That's all I'm gonna say.
So it's a loaded question. It's kind of a trick question. The key word in that makes it really difficult is simple.
Right.
So done properly, a quitclaim deed can be a great way to avoid probate.
But there's better ways.
But there are better ways. So, and people will come into me and they say, well, we did a quitclaim deed just like our neighbor did, just like our cousins did. And it may have worked out fine for the brother or the cousin or whoever, but you got to be really careful. I have people that will, in a desire to avoid, I told you before, a maximum of a $5,000 on a probate fee.
Right.
That they've handed their kids a $50,000 tax bill on an appreciated house.
Oh, yeah. Well, even besides that, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an attorney, you quitclaim deed your Billy Bob, your son, on. Billy Bob works 80 hours that week. While driving home, Billy Bob falls asleep at the wheel, crosses, killing several people. Can they attach to your property if they sue?
Potentially they can, yep. Billy Bob put your property at risk.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So anyway, quitclaim deeds are an effective tool. They should be used with caution. They are, go to a qualified attorney that understands what they're doing to be able to get it done. I fix, and you see them all the time, we fix bad quitclaim deeds all the time.
My favorite is the drawer quitclaim deed that they can no longer find.
Yeah, that's very effective.
Yeah, that's a good one. I know we did one. Now, what do you think about ladybirds?
I like ladybird deeds.
Okay.
For a lot of modest valued clients, they don't have a ton of assets, and I can use a ladybird deed as a concept. It says it's a kind of like a beneficiary on a quitclaim deed. So mom and dad could quitclaim it to themselves. They can maintain the ownership of it. Nobody else becomes an owner of it. They don't have to worry about creditors of their kids coming in. So Billy Bob's creditors can't get there, and they can sell it. It's theirs.
Right.
But it says at the end of our lives we still own this piece of property, or the property hasn't been conveyed, it is now going to be distributed to our 3 kids. And so it can work out very well. It's a great probate avoidance tool. It doesn't take the place or completely replace the need for a revocable living trust if there are other things going on within the family.
Right.
Again, for kids get along great. It's a modest house. It's an even split. Okay, fine. We're pretty good. A ladybird deed is awesome.
Right, and that's a good point I've never really thought of before. So it's not only how much you have in assets, but it really is the dynamics of your family too. So it's both those factors weighing in on whether you need to go the trust route or
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Right. So you can put the three kids. The three kids can become an owner afterward.
Right.
But if two of them don't ever talk to each other and won't be seen in the same room with each other, aren't going to agree on what the sales price should be, it is not always a great effective tool. A trust where we go through and we name a trustee who has the authority to do what's in everybody's best interest. That's sometimes a better way to go if there's going to be a problem with getting along.
No, and we've experienced that quite a bit. We've had situations where 3 kids, 3 owners, one will not show up to closing.
Right.
And if that's we cannot transfer ownership.
Right.
And boy, just mom and dad's gone.
Right.
But
so one of the scariest things I see with that type of with the ladybird deed to avoid probate, we've named the 9 kids as the remaindermen in this deed. So 9 kids get title to the property. Well, one of the kids, and they get it as joint tenants.
Right.
So again, this is part of the legal conclusions about what you put on there. They got it as joint tenants. Everybody, all those kids have a 1/9 interest. One of the kids died before mom and dad. What he gets is 1/9 interest, but we have a probate to do for him before we can sell the house on behalf of the other surviving 8. And so, again, it may not be the best thing to do, and doesn't solve everybody's problem. So
if you don't like your family, don't do nothing. If you do like your family, please call John and get things set up.
So, okay.
Let's see here.
Number 9. True or false? If you have $100,000 in an IRA and $100,000 in a savings account, you should spend the money from the IRA first when paying for assisted living.
All right, I do believe this is true. I'm not positive, but it seems like I've read something about this. But
So,
go ahead.
okay. And actually, this is a little bit of a trick question, too. This is where it gets into a tax question. So the answer, sometimes the answer to this is going to be false. So
Okay.
depending on what the doctor classifies you as and how the assisted living facility is set up, if you need to be there and is medically documented, the cost of staying at the assisted living community can be a deductible expense. So if you've got $100,000 in an IRA that has a traditional IRA that's never been taxed, when you pull the money out of there, the IRS says, "Send me my money."
Yeah, it's time to get taxed.
And so, but if you pull $10,000 out and you've got a $10,000 deduction because you're in assisted living, that wipes out the tax obligation on that $10,000 draw.
Right.
So, and sometimes it's quite a lot more than that. If you're at $4,000 a month, you almost you're getting up to a $40,000 deduction for the year, and you can pull $40,000 out of that IRA and have no tax liability.
Okay.
And so you turn red money that hasn't been taxed before into green money. And for IRAs, the kids who inherit the IRAs still have to pay the taxes on it when they pull that money out.
Yeah.
So would you rather inherit money that you have to pay taxes on, or would you rather inherit money that you don't have to pay taxes on?
I'll go for the no taxes. That's a great tip. And I had read something about that a long time ago. But
yeah,
you
often
made these kind of tricky, by the way.
I did. Yep. So, okay, last question that we have here. True or false? If you run out of money, the government has programs that will ensure your health needs are provided for.
I'll say true.
And again, the answer is no. It's false. The government doesn't have unlimited programs at this point. There might be. Bernie wanted everything to be free for everybody, so maybe it would be different then. But today, we're still not a completely socialistic country that's going to cover that. So,
but you have nursing homes and such.
Yeah, but not okay. If you're completely healthy and you run out of money, you can't go to a nursing home.
No.
If you're sick and you run out of money, we do have nursing homes where Medicaid will cover it.
Right.
So,
but that's a good point because if you're healthy, you're almost boofed.
Right. So, or you're just not sick enough. There's a medical criteria to meet before you can have Medicaid coverage at the nursing home. And
good point.
And if you're still relatively healthy, you don't qualify. And so anyway, that's the key
That's
there.
a good way of looking
Right.
at it, though, because in my head it was like, no, once you get sick and
Yeah.
but
The skilled nursing homes, which, again, no offense to the nursing homes, but nobody volunteers to go there. Right? I mean, it's the last
Yeah.
resort. I got so sick and I didn't have enough money. I had to go to a nursing home.
and these are not senior communities talking about
Right.
night and day differences.
So it's not there's no governmental program that's going
Right.
to cover your cost at Lakeshore.
No.
Or the sunrises, so now again, that's changing a little bit. There are some Medicaid programs coming out, some community-based Medicaid programs, where that's going to be changing, and there is some availability for that. But that's in a transitional spot right now. So
Right.
we're hopefully going to come back in the near future with some other alternatives that will help you do that without having it be this all or nothing nursing home.
Sure.
Or
Because that is the situation
Yeah.
now. It's either and the qualifications to get into a nursing home paid by Medicaid, you have to be pretty daggone sick.
yeah.
It's
Life
not-
isn't good.
Life is not good when you're going into that point. That's a real valid point there. If you're somewhat healthy, you're right. There's nothing out there.
Right. You're left to some of your healthcare costs are going to be on your own if you're
Sure.
So.
Wow.
So anyway, I did put these questions together. There was some tricks to them, but it drives the point home is that there's a lot of different things to consider, and to be able to think that you're going to be able to read your articles in AARP and have it all
Right.
straightened out isn't going to work. So
No, for sure.
that's
Well,
why we exist.
We have a question from Bob Kiesler. How do I utilize my VA home certificate? It's 32 years old. So this came in off of Facebook.
Okay. So I don't know for sure what he's talking about. He's talking about his ability to get the VHA loan. If he has not done that yet.
And he might be, if you're a disabled veteran, are you referring to your property taxes and eliminating your property taxes off of that? Might be
Yeah.
what you're referring to.
So there are.
Certificate.
So I'm not exactly sure what he means by that, but
Right.
there are, there are county offices within the VA that have
Yeah,
that
that's
are
the best
very
place.
good and are aware of the different programs. I've had a client who recently had their roof replaced by the VA. Great selling point when they got to the point of
Heck
having
yeah.
to put the house on the market.
Yep.
It didn't have a 30-year-old roof. It had a brand new roof, and she was able to get you through the county. Offices that she lived in. I think she was in Macomb County. She worked
Okay.
with the Macomb County Veteran Service Officers, and they were able to get her on the list and got her approved for a new roof that they paid for.
Okay.
So,
And that's through the Veterans Association in Macomb County.
the Macomb, every county has a Veteran Services branch that they can access. So those are oftentimes great resources.
So, Bob, why don't you go ahead and reach out to them? If they can't help you or if you have more questions, reach out to me or reach out to John.
Yeah.
And, John, this is a great time to tell people how they can reach you.
So, probably you can reach me a couple different ways, but the best way to probably reach me is just the old-fashioned phone. And to pick up the phone and call, my phone number is 586-493-0400. And that's probably the best way. There's people, my assistants are answering that phone
Okay.
between 8:30 and 5, and they are good about making me get up to the phone, return the calls, and if you need to make an appointment, they can do that as well. So I can be reached via email as well. It's my email address is john@casterlinelaw.com. People get confused with Casterline. It sounds horrible because it's 3 syllables. And I always just tell people it's just like Centerline, but it's just Casterline, CASTERLINE. So john@casterlinelaw.com. And you can also check me out on my website. It's www.casterlinelaw.com. So casterlinelaw.com. So
Excellent.
those are ways to reach me, and I'd be happy to listen to you, listen to see what your family dynamics are, see where you are, try to give you the best advice possible in a complicated area.
Well, definitely good stuff. And here again, remember, if you do not love your family and the people around you, then do nothing. If you do, then you should reach out to them because it can, and yourself, quite frankly, because it can make a life-changing difference. I mean, everything's, great today, but tomorrow's coming.
Yeah, changes happen.
Change is happening. Well, John, this was excellent. I love the format. That was a lot of fun. I do think next time I take a quiz from you, though, I'm bringing help because you're kind of tricky here. And what a great show. And at that point, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Baby Boomer University. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, rich@richsparks.com or john@casterlinelaw.com. And we have a lot of first and last names here, so we got pretty lucky. We obviously bought these a long time ago. And that's it. Class is dismissed.